Have you ever done something really bad, but you didn't even know you'd done it?
Uh-oh, she's looking at us. What did she say?
What? Oh, sorry, sir. No one was listening.
Is it garbage night? We left the toilet seat up. What? What is it, woman? What?
Today we're gonna head back in time, in the time before, long, long ago. You there yet? Okay, keep going. We're gonna go all the way back to the year 1967. This is an ancient time, where the Beatles have released Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band. And this is a time where a really good book was published by Wolfram Eberhard. It says he's German, so I'm assuming that's how you pronounce his name.
In this series, you'll master German pronunciation.
And we get some really good choice knowledge morsels from this book. Maybe in the last 50 years, there's been some sources that are more modern, that add something huge to this conversation or clarify parts we're confused about. But it's just really complex. And I have to read like so many books, like lots of books. And some of these books, they have those like yellow faded pages where you're kind of like, oh, this guy's dead. Something really odd about ancient China is they didn't develop traditional morality the way a large portion of other cultures did. 2nd century AD, the concept of sin begins to appear in Chinese philosophy. Prepare yourself. Reading is coming. If we apply our definition of sin, a violation of a divine code, Chinese folk religion before the Han period, 206 BC, seems not to have had the concept of sin. What I read actually said AD, and it dang it! I need to fact check. Although it recognized a great number of supernatural beings, people who offended the deities, spirits, and other supernatural beings by not honoring them or by failing to sacrifice in the right way or at the right time might make them angry. The deities then could or would punish such people. An event of this kind was more or less like any offense against a human superior, with the only difference that deities were believed to be superior to humans. They formed, if this expression be permitted, Eberhard's like really nice about it. He's like, Hans, if this expression be permitted, a social class above the upper class in human society. This class of supernatural beings was structured. Some deities had more, others less power. But the structure was more like a class structure than like a bureaucratic one, although one god was vaguely recognized as the highest of all. They're probably talking about Shangdi. If you want to know who Shangdi is, click the link and go to our last video. There's this idea of they didn't really need to worship the gods. These gods are kind of capricious. They could do the wrong thing without realizing it and offend a god.
No, you're floating too high!
So the world was very uncertain. It's kind of scary. Like, imagine that you have a whole theology and religious system, but nobody's giving you a handbook, but you know that you're doing stuff wrong. That might actually be how a lot of people feel about Christianity because they haven't read the handbook. But think of it like those British Victorian films. Or Oliver Twist is kind of like,
please, sir, I want some more.
There's this idea of, I'm above you, you're lower, we don't really have a relationship, I can do what I want. And that's kind of how it feels in the writings from 206 BC, or maybe 80, depending on your sources, Wikipedia. So what this means is essentially feelings of guilt associated with sin in the West just didn't develop the same way. Instead, there's this internalized fear, as Eberhard would like to say, of breaking societal law. If I do this, society's really gonna look down on me, and I'm afraid. And it's not necessarily that it's wrong, it's more that it's like taboo. Imagine how morally different you'd be if your morality didn't develop along the same lines of, I am offending a universal God or a universal moral code for hundreds, if not thousands of years. And then when that does happen, are you gonna be able to accept that? How's that gonna enter into your society? This isn't to say people didn't feel guilty, but it's more like, so in America, if you're speeding in a car and you're, let's say, 5 miles over the speed limit, you're not gonna wake up in the middle of the night tossing and turning and be like, oh my goodness, I was speeding, give me a sped. Instead, we don't really feel that we're making an immoral decision. Now, some laws to us are very moral, but a lot of them are just kind of inconvenient, you know? Like, here's looking at you in Washington State, there's a county where it's illegal to really poach a Bigfoot, which is really frustrating if you're big into hunting and into poaching.
So I was hooked from that moment on. I started spending all the time I could spare searching for the beast, and I spent time I couldn't spare. That's how I lost my job and my friends.
You don't feel what you've done as evil necessarily, but you know you've messed up. So it's not morally wrong, but breaking the taboo haunts you. Like that time the Seahawks lost the Super Bowl because they made a bad call.
Play clock at 5. Pass is intercepted at the goal line.
It wasn't morally wrong, but I learned you never call the game until the clock runs out and text your friend, haha, you Patriots are losing, because it can be embarrassing. So in modern folk religion, the gods are there to represent and implement moral law, kind of like a societal law. And it boils down often to how you've offended or hurt people in society. But it's not associated with a relationship with that god. You're probably not even going to harm them if you break that god's law or that god's rules, right? That's not how it works. The connection of feelings of guilt and shame are less about doing wrong to a universal god and more about whether or not you're causing societal problems. Now, they would have these documents that were sort of like pamphlets and people would read them and it might describe what hell was like. We're actually going to do a hell video in a couple weeks, so stick around for that if you like things that are depressing. But these documents would show, hey, if you act this way in society, this is what's going to happen to you in the afterlife. Sometimes good, sometimes bad. But the documents differ a lot. So you can't just read one and say, aha, I get Taiwanese religion, because some of their versions of hell and some of their versions of the afterlife are very different from the other documents. But they all kind of have the similar idea of you have a moral obligation to society and the people around you. Some theologies would lean towards life as this sort of chance to balance out your karma bank account, and you do the best things you could so that when you go to the afterlife, you have a good chance of it not being terrible, and then you're reborn. But theologies are very different. Buddhism, Taoism, mixing together, making that soup.
Today, we're doing soup. Taiwan style.
While one group leans heavily into laws like eating meat is wrong, another might seem to keep coming back to that juicy beef noodle. You know what I'm talking about.
Oh!
I'm ready to eat some beef noodle soup right now.
Very flavorful beef. Okay.
Jeez! That is good.
This is so good.
So the gods reveal sin in society, and they're these impartial judges. At least impartial the same way judges are on Earth, right? You can always bribe a guy on Earth, you know? So you find some really low-level god judge, and he's kind of like a terrible person in life, and then he becomes a god, and he's got this negative characteristic. Maybe he'll like a little bit of dosh. Gods even make mistakes. Yivahad showed all these different stories of times when somebody would actually sleep in the temple near a city god so that their spirit in the middle of the night could go up to court and kind of argue their case. There's this idea of it's not an infallible system. Bureaucratic mistakes happen in the afterlife. Buddhist and Taoist concepts are kind of mixing with interesting results, and it's not always going to be the same. Maybe someone from a Buddhist background and mentality is going to see someone who's homeless and say, oh, he deserves it. You know, he's a terrible person, that's why he's poor. It's this idea of karmic justice, where someone who's from a very Taoist background might be more concerned about the yin and the yang and the feng shui and the different aspects of the positive and the negative of the land and the area they're at. And they might say, oh, this place has a lot of dark energy and positive energy. Very different ideas all coalescing here. In one of the pamphlets, hurting animals was not wrong because animals have the souls of humans and they're reincarnated, so they must have been a terrible person to be an animal. But killing an animal was wrong because you're murdering, because it's got the soul of a human. So then there's this kind of really weird dynamic where it's like natural punishment of nature to punch a squirrel, like that's divine justice. The squirrel deserves it. But if you came in and shot a squirrel, you gotta be really careful because you might become a squirrel. So how do we know when a law is broken? But whether or not a culprit is caught and punished by human justice, 38,000 heavenly officials watch all humans during the day. 38,000 others watch during the night. These officials are divided into three categories: the gods of the hearth, the spirits passing through the air, and the spirits of the rain gutter, which I'm pretty sure in Chinese sounds a lot more miraculous and powerful. They see or hear whatever is done inside the house or outside, take careful note, and report it to the office. 3,600 officials compose a monthly report. At the end of each year, a final report is made in 3 copies. 1 copy goes to the Jade Emperor, 1 to the 10 Hells, 1 to the 3 officials who mete out the fate. Thus every bad act, but also every good act of every person is known and recorded. Very bureaucratic, and you're going to learn that there's a lot of bureaucracy in the afterlife. What's interesting is also this idea, though, of how fallible this system is. It's a spiritual government system. And you kind of realize that maybe life is really auspicious for people in folk religion. Maybe their entire life is about, is this conducive to success? Am I going to have a good afterlife? Are things going to be bad? Am I going to be able to work off my karmic imbalance? And there's this kind of fear and this unknowingness about it. So you're trying very hard to have this good transactional relationship with society, and to live a good life in trying to make sure that you don't cross the wrong boundary. But you don't always associate those feelings of guilt and shame that maybe in the West we would, where we feel like we've hurt our relationship with God. It's more, oh, I've screwed up and I've made a mistake and I've broken the law. They're just different concepts. So how does morality work in Christianity? Compare and contrast time. We need a theme song for this. Christianity has an entire moral law that was given to Jewish people for preserving life, living well on earth, and for the opportunity to do good. The Hebrew words are a lot more positive sounding. So it's this idea of God gives you commandments to live by and teachings to live by, and you can do good through them. If you want to know more about that, read the book Sitting at the Feet of Rabbi Jesus, because my Hebrew is not very good. The law, though, is viewed as positive. It's this wonderful thing. It's a gift from God, teachings to live by. It's given to Moses a long, long time ago, and it gave rules that the people could follow to have a good life. And we can't overstate this enough. These rules are important to them in the physical world and the spiritual world. They're very practical. And we'll talk about that in future videos, but it's important to understand that Old Testament religion and folk religion have a lot of overlap here.
Every 7 years we have a command in the Bible, in the Tanakh, that we have to let the land rest, and we're not meant to work the land. We're meant to study this year Torah, and our farm is meant to be open for who would like to come and eat.
It involves crop rotation, things you can eat, cleanliness, goodness, charity, and like that pesky mandate of heaven we talked about, if you didn't follow the law, you could lose your kingdom or not be blessed. But if you followed the law, you'd do well, and it'd be blessed in abundance, and your trees would be kind of like, crazy, it's so weird, I have extra fruit. What'd you guys do? Did you guys do something charitous and good? I have extra fruit. I can't emphasize it enough, though, because it's going to come back into play discussing Taiwanese folk religion, that the relationship with land is so important in the Old Testament belief system and folk religion. But the law also condemns us, because we can't live up to it. We all sin. And in Christianity, sin is different from breaking the law, because breaking the law, you broke the law, but maybe the law isn't universally moral. But sin is going against a moral God and breaking God's universal moral code. It's anything we do contrary to God and His law. It's a bit more than that even though, because sin is not always easy to describe. It could be tangible, like kicking your friend, right? But it could be intangible, like let's say you found a cookie on the counter and you're like, I know I shouldn't eat this cookie.
I'm going for a walk. It's no big deal.
So you steal the cookie, but somebody had earlier shouted out to the entire office, eat the cookie is free for whoever finds it. So you think you stole, but you didn't actually steal. Well, because in your heart you thought you stole and you thought you were going against the God of the universe and you're breaking this moral code, you've sinned, even though an actual sin grievance didn't occur. The law is very hard to live by. It was given to each of us to reveal that we're far from God and we need help. Christians don't believe that it's capricious. We believe that we're made in the image of God, but we have a problem, and that problem is sin. See, God is good and righteous, and unlike in folk religion, everybody's going to stand before just Him with an impartial judge, and you can't bribe this guy. And He will justify and condemn sin. He will reveal everything to the light, and the punishment is hell. Just like the Taiwanese afterlife, you have to pay for crimes you did. But there is a slight difference. You see, folk religion cares immensely about individual deeds. So much so that hell is divided literally into different sections based on deeds. There's like a hell of eye gouging for people who did this. There's a hell of, there's lots of different things. And we'll talk about that, but Christianity sees it differently. See, we're guilty of sinning against an immortal, omnipotent, transcendent being. And this sin has made us a criminal, for lack of a better term. And if you go to a prison, it doesn't matter what crime you committed. You're a criminal. Stole a chicken? Criminal. Stole a cookie that you didn't really steal? Criminal. Tax fraud? Criminal. Murdered a nun? Criminal, believe it or not. So as sinners, the Bible says we've all sinned and we fall short of the glory of God. In Taiwanese folk religion, you need to clear those accounts. Whether it's in the Diu, the hell system, or something like petitioning gods, you did the crime, you pay the time. You either bribe your way out of it, or change that cosmic balance, or petition the gods to say, I didn't commit a crime, or petition the gods to say, I need this forgiveness. But there's this idea of it has to be atoned for, and there's some process that has to happen. You have to clear those accounts.
I would like you to crunch those numbers again.
It's programmed. There's no such thing as
Just crunch them. Just crunch them, please.
crunch.
Did it help?
But in Christianity, it's not about how many sins you've done, or even what sins. Like we've said in other videos, our image of God is dirty. It needs to be cleaned. Sin is a status, like the status of criminal. And we need to be pardoned of being a criminal, not of our specific crimes. And that's actually way harder to fix than a list of crimes. Because a criminal is always a criminal, even if they pay the time. Even if a criminal gets out of prison, it hasn't erased what he's done. For that, they need to be pardoned, their sentence commuted. There has to be something far stronger than paying for the crime, because they will always be a criminal. A criminal is always a criminal, even if they pay the time, unless there's a way to change that status. And we're going to get to how Christians change that status in the next few videos. So we hope you've enjoyed our videos. We hope you've learned a lot. Again, this is a tough and delicate situation. We're excited for some future content because it's a little less like I'm reading 56 books, hoping I don't make a mistake. But this is complex, and we want to open a dialogue. We'd love to hear questions for you, comments, concerns. We would love to hear the content that you want to see us make and create. If you haven't done it already, please hit that subscribe button and also click that little bell, and it'll kind of give you a little YouTube notification that's kind of like, oh, Jake Smith was talking again, when we do new videos. And our content's actually going to get wider too. So thank you so much, and we'll see you later. So we have that nobleman, and he's walking, and he's like, there's a poor person, he's like, ugh, into the mud, ha ha ha, I'm a British Victorian.